In this video, we will push the limits of our body, and while doing so, we will of course touch on the most extreme points science has taken us to. Everyone knows what G-force is. No, I'm not talking about the graphics card. What is G-force? Let me explain it this way. You know that feeling when you are driving very fast in a car and you feel like you have gotten very heavy and are being pressed into your seat? Or when you are on a roller coaster and feel like your organs are about to come out? Well, that is G-force. Scientifically, G-force, that is, gravitational force, is the force that keeps us on the surface of the Earth, and it equals 1G. We do not feel this. It is the most basic G-force, and compared to the examples we're about to give, calling this a force is a little ironic. Because essentially, with every increase of 1G, a load equivalent to your body weight multiplied by that force is placed on your body. Let me explain with a simple example. Say you weigh 80 kilograms, but that weight is your value at 1G. If we were to put you in an environment of 10G, your body would feel as though it were carrying not 80 kilograms, but 800 kilograms. If everything is clear, let's start with examples of G-forces from low to high. First, 0G. Astronauts who go to space can experience these, since they have left Earth. They can move as if they have no body weight at all. In fact, some astronauts have been observed to have great difficulty standing and walking when they return to Earth. Another effect of 0G is height increase. Yes, you heard that right, because some astronauts returning from space are not exposed to the effects of gravity, the disk spaces in their spines increase, and a height gain of a few millimeters has been observed. Of course, we are not talking about a permanent height increase. When they return to Earth, they are exposed to gravitational force again, so their height returns to what it was. Just imagine if it were permanent. Everyone who wanted to grow taller would be racing to become an astronaut. Anyway, let's not stray from the topic. We said 0G, we already live and know 1G. Now, as we said at the beginning of the video, it is time to push the limits of our body. F1 drivers, whom many people enjoy watching and some admire, are exposed to approximately 5G on a sharp corner. They feel a force equal to exactly 5 times their body weight. This proves just how demanding a sport they compete in and how physically robust they actually are, doesn't it? Before continuing with our examples, let's briefly look at how G-force is calculated. In short, G-force equals maximum speed divided by the time taken to reach that speed. And if we then divide that result by 9.81 meters per second squared, we find the G-force. The 9.81 here is the gravitational constant discovered by Newton. This constant tells us something very important and has greatly simplified our work in scientific developments. The meaning of the constant is this. If you drop any object from a height, it will travel 9.81 meters per second toward the Earth's core. Of course, in this equation, we are ignoring factors such as friction and air resistance. A ship and a balloon dropped from the same height will hit the ground at the same time. Now, let's calculate the G-force of a sports car together. A car with a maximum speed of 200 km per hour corresponds to 56 meters per second. Let's assume it reaches that speed in 4.6 seconds. In that case, the G-force applied to us, traveling inside the car, is 56 divided by 4.6 equals 12 meters per second squared. And dividing that by 9.81 gives us 1.2 G. In other words, the force pressing you into that seat is only 0.2 more than the normal 1G. Actually, 0.2 may sound like very little, and it is not that little. It just seems small compared to the other examples in our video. So let's continue. We calculated how much you feel in your sports car, 1.2 G. So how much G-force do you think the astronauts, who we just said experience 0G in space, feel inside the rocket during launch? Exactly 3 Gs. From this point on, if you multiply each G-force value I give by your own weight, you can better understand how much greater a force they are experiencing. Let's gradually increase a little more. For example, the drivers inside specially built vehicles called top fuel dragsters are exposed to approximately 4.5 G. It is a little difficult for us to get our hands on those vehicles, but we can also be exposed to high G forces. The roller coasters I mentioned at the beginning of the video, which make you feel like your organs are coming out, can give us that experience. On advanced, latest generation roller coasters, especially in sharp, sudden turns, our body is exposed to 6 Gs. In other words, if you weigh 80 kilograms, you feel like you weigh 480 kilograms. Being exposed to this G-force for a long time can cause injuries and loss of consciousness. That is why it is worth being careful when getting on roller coasters. Now let's get to the point of truly pushing the limits of the human body. When it comes to G-force, the names that come to mind as the greatest experts are fighter pilots. Fighter pilots resist a force of approximately 12 G during takeoff, dives, and sudden maneuvers. That is why not everyone in the world succeeds in this training. In their training, pilots are spun in machines called centrifuges, just like a washing machine. Centrifuge machines automatically calculate how much G-force the person inside will feel and rotate at the required speeds to simulate G-force in a laboratory setting. During training and while flying aircraft, pilots sometimes experience an event called GLOC. GLOC is when the blood in our body is pulled downward and the brain and organs are momentarily deprived of oxygen. When a person is in this state, they momentarily lose consciousness and enter a kind of semi-sleep state. However, as blood flow returns to normal, the person can regain consciousness. Next is the event involving Eli beading, the highest G-force a human being is known to have been exposed to. During the Cold War, this fighter pilot voluntarily agreed to ride a device called a rocket sled as part of some experiments that were far too dangerous to test in manned fighter jets. He was exposed to exactly 82.6 G for just 0.04 seconds. Normally, as you would understand, this level of G-force is enough to kill a person, but because the exposure lasted such a short time, Eli beading survived. However, even being exposed to that force for just 0.04 seconds caused damage to many of his blood vessels and resulted in internal bleeding. This was a controlled test. It could also be called a laboratory experiment, but unfortunately, many people around the world are exposed to even more than this every day involuntarily. Where? Sadly, in traffic accidents. If a high-speed vehicle hits a stationary wall or object, the occupants are exposed to a greater G-force than Eli beading experienced. This is why we must follow traffic rules to the very end. During a race, Kenny Bragg's brakes locked up while going at full speed, and he experienced exactly 214 grams at that moment. He felt as though his body weight was exactly 214 times greater than normal, which corresponds to approximately 14.5 to 15 tons. Under normal circumstances, we would naturally assume that someone feeling such a weight would have little chance of survival. Yet Kenny survived despite every bone in his body being broken. Let's raise the G-forces a little higher. The next example, can you guess? It comes from a machine that all of us are familiar with and that I think every one of us has used at least once. The washing machines I just mentioned above can actually be called the centrifuge machines in our homes. Especially during the spin cycle, these machines rotate with a force exceeding 400 G. And now, let's step outside our world in keeping with the style of our channel. The magnificent power of the universe is before us once again. Let's look at neutron stars. These stars are formed when the material left over from supernova explosions collapses inward under the effect of gravity. Although their mass is very large, their volume is extremely small. For example, some neutron stars are only 10 to 15 kilometers in diameter. In such a case, their density and consequently their gravitational pull are enormous. The gravitational force, that is the G-force, of a neutron star is approximately, hold on tight, exactly 7 trillion G. Do you know what that means? It is known that there are approximately 2,000 neutron stars in our galaxy, And if we could reach one of them and somehow build a bridge made entirely of steel or iron, that bridge would disappear within seconds. And you could put what remains of that massive structure in your back pocket and go home. And finally, fittingly for the last example, let's talk about the greatest g-force in the universe. This g-force is called Planck acceleration, or Planck time. This concept was discovered by Max Planck, and what he discovered refers to the shortest measurable slice of time. We explained how g-force is calculated. It is found by dividing an object's speed by the time taken to reach that speed. We agreed on that. Something else we need to remember is the speed of light, which we mentioned in our previous videos, the highest attainable speed. That is also settled. Well, Planck combines exactly these two things. He performs the calculation by calling the shortest time in which the speed of light can be reached the Planck time. And the resulting number, as you might imagine, is very, very large. This g-force, written as 68 followed by 49 zeros, is thought to be what the universe was exposed to once. This g-force is accepted as the one that occurred during the Big Bang that formed the universe. It is also believed that forces close to this exist in black holes, but scientifically we are not yet at the level to calculate this. One step beyond black holes, quantum physics begins, but that is the subject of another video. That's it. Today we push the limits of the g-force we are exposed to every day and try to elaborate on this topic and broaden our horizons. See you in another video.